Hey bio fans, David here from the Biography Wrap, and today we are going to explore the life of the Boston Globe's Spotlight team through the movie Spotlight, directed by Tom McCarthy. The movie begins in 1976 Boston, where two police officers discuss a case where John Gagan, a priest of a Catholic church, was arrested for child molestation. A high-ranking father of the church and the assistant DA talk to the child's mother. At one of the Globe's meetings, Barron, the new editor, brings up the Gagan case and how he has molested over 80 children, and that there's a lawyer who can prove that Cardinal Law knew about it and did nothing about it. He says they need to cover the story more and suggests filing a motion to reopen the case. One of the people says that the church and other people will see it as the newspaper suing the church. After the meeting, Barron calls the Spotlight team and asks them to cover the Gagan case. Mike, an investigative journalist, goes to visit lawyer Mitchell Garabedian. He is the one who claimed that he had proof that Cardinal Law knew about the abuse. Mitchell denies to talk and asks him to leave. While doing so, Mike asks if he could speak with some of his clients, the victims. While digging in, one of the journalists, Sasha, finds out about Sil Saviano, leader of a victims organization known as SNAP, Survivors Network of Those Abused by Priests. While looking through files, Matt, another journalist on the team, finds one more case about a priest named Liam Barrett, who molested some kids in Philly and was moved to Boston, did the same thing, and was moved again. The church settled the case the same day as they did with the Gagan case. Marty visits the Cardinal and asks him some questions. Cardinal offers his help for anything they might need and then gives him a catechism book. The Spotlight team questions Phil about his organization, which offers full cooperation. Phil says that these cases are not based on sexual preferences. Instead, it is the priests using their power to rape children, irrespective of their gender. He then tells how he was preyed upon when he was 11 years old. He explains that the priest paying attention to you is a big deal, and it is like God himself asking for help. He then says when a priest tells you a dirty joke, it is a secret between you two, so you go along. He then shows his porno magazine, and you still go along. Soon, one day he asks you to do some sexual favors, and you still go along, because the priest has now groomed a little child's brain and made him feel trapped, because how can you say no to God? Phil further says that it's not just physical abuse, it's spiritual abuse, which causes one to lose faith. The person then reaches for a bottle or the needle, and when that is not enough, he jumps off a cliff. Phil then proceeds to show a box full of evidence and stories and says he sent years ago to the Globe, who were not interested at that time. Later, Mike stops Mitchell and tries to talk, but Mitchell is uninterested. Mike states that he is digging around for Spotlight, despite not being allowed to say it. This spikes Mitchell's interest, and he agrees to talk to him. Sasha also interviews some of the victims, who are members of SNAP. One of Mitchell's clients, Patrick, tells him that the incident occurred when he was 12, right after his father killed himself. He says his mother was schizophrenic, and thus not in a good place either. Patrick hesitates for a second, and then tells that Gagan took him to get ice cream. On the way home, Gagan started patting his leg, and then grabbed his penis, which terrified Patrick, and he froze. Mitchell puts a halt to the questioning, and Mike notices needle wounds on his arms. While leaving, Patrick says they can use his name and will get those. Mitchell says that he is one of the lucky ones if he is still alive. Sasha's client, Joe, tells her that some nun introduced him to the street priest. He says that the priest could tell that he was gay and then offered to play strip poker. He lost, and things went on from there. Sasha asks for details. Joe tells her that the priest said that it was a way to get Joe more comfortable with his body. Joe says that the priest then took off his own clothes and asked for a blowjob, and Joe abided. Joe explains that it was the first time somebody had accepted that he was gay, and that too, it was a priest. Sasha then asks if they ever had intercourse, and Joe confirms. He says it was all very confusing and painful and starts crying. Later that night, Sasha asks Joe if he told Sil Saviano he says yes. He then tells her that he went to see a lawyer who said they could only get a small settlement, so he didn't pursue it further. Mike gets a call from Richard Sipe, a worker at one of the treatment facilities for the church. It was a place where priests who were found guilty were sent for correction. Richard said that people always believe that there are just a few bad apples, but the problem is a lot bigger in reality. Matt gets some books to see all the priests that have been in the parish. The next day, Mike tells Robbie that these priests prey on children from broken families as they are less likely to speak. While reading the book, Matt finds that in 1980, Gagan was pulled from JP for sick leave. They again find Liam Barrett's name, who was also on sick leave in 1991 when he was removed from the church for abuse. Robbie and Sasha visit McClesh, who says he can't discuss the cases he settled against multiple priests as they are confidential. Sasha asks why there weren't any records at the court, and McClesh said they dealt directly with the court. They figure out that it's all like a racket. They take the agreement, the victim has to sign an NDA, the lawyers take a third of the agreed amount, and the church just swipes it under the rug. Mitchell tells Mike that some of the victims filed criminal cases, but they were sealed by the judge on request from some friends at the church. Mitchell then says that Marty is looking at the church because it takes an outsider to point out things and look at them differently. He then says if it takes a village to raise a child, it takes a village to abuse one. Robbie then asks his close friend Jim, who helped settle multiple of these cases, and he refuses to speak as it would be wrong ethically. Richard later says that they need to look at the celibacy culture. He says that the church is aware of pedophilia and abuse but chooses to ignore it. He says that 13 priests sound low, and according to his calculations, almost 6%, or 90 priests, have probably abused someone. They tell Ben that they are going to dig deeper and find more victims and look out for as many priests as possible. While looking for the names, Matt finds a priest who lives in his neighborhood. He warns his children and asks them to stay away from there. The four of them dig through the books and find 87 priests. Robbie and Sasha then visit Eric and ask him for the names of the priests and the victims. Eric refuses, and Robbie says that they could expose all the lawyers helping hide child abuse. Eric says he did write the Globe about 20 names earlier, but they buried it. Richard tells Mike that the church will come after him and his team and do everything to silence them. Barron tells them that they need to focus on the institution and how all of this is systemic, not the individual priests, so that real action takes place. The team continues to talk to the victims and finds out that everybody tried to keep the victims quiet. Sasha meets a priest, Father Paquin, and asks him if he ever molested children. He says yes with complete rationalization in his brain, but didn't get any pleasure from it. He says that he would know the difference between raping a child and fooling around, as he was himself raped. Soon, his sister comes and asks Sasha to leave. Mitchell tells Mike that a few years earlier, he filed a public motion against a priest and attached all the documents that Globe is searching for. But the records are no longer there in the courthouse as the church had them removed, which was illegal. Mike tells Robbie that they need to file a motion, which will cause the judge to ask Mitchell to refile the documents. Thus, they will get all of it. The September 11th attacks take place, thus derailing the whole team, and they are asked to stop these investigations immediately. However, soon they get back on track, and Mitchell refiles the documents. Mike goes to get the documents but is told that they are confidential, so he talks to a judge and gets the documents. Mike reads one of the documents to Robbie, which said that a woman and her family were asked to keep silent about the abuse 7 of her boys sustained. Another document said that Gagan has a history of homosexual relations with young boys. Robbie says they should wait before publishing the story, and Mike argues with him over it and says that he is wrong. Soon, Robbie is told that an Irish Catholic judge filed in their favor, which means they could get cardinal law and prove them guilty. Robbie tells Barron that he wants to wait a little more so they can get the proof on the other 70 priests, which would prove that the entire system is at fault. Baron and Ben agree to the delay. Jim tells Robbie that he did defend those priests because it was his job. He gets angry, but then tells Robbie that he is correct about all the 70 priests. Matt suggests putting the documents online so that all the readers can see them for themselves. Robbie confesses to Ben, Baron, and his team that he was the one who ignored the story years ago. Baron says he doesn't care and praises Robbie and others since they all have helped bring this case to light and will cause a considerable impact. The story was published, which impacted a lot of people. The Spotlight got multiple calls from victims willing to tell their stories, which enabled them to publish over 600 stories over the next year and get a change in the system. That's it from the movie Spotlight. If you enjoyed it, consider subscribing. Let me know what you thought of this true story, and make sure to check out this next one.